The sky above Valoria Prime burned red and orange. Ships fell from the clouds like dying birds. Princess Alindra stood on the balcony of the Crystal Palace and watched her world die. She was young for a Valorian royal, barely 40 cycles old, which made her equal to a human woman of 25 years. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were the color of silver moonlight. Long white hair fell down her back like a waterfall of snow. She was beautiful by any standard in the galaxy, but at this moment, beauty meant nothing. The Krath Dominion had come. They came with 1,000 warships. They came with weapons that could crack open moons. They came with soldiers who knew no mercy and commanders who wanted only conquest. The Valorian defense fleet had fought bravely, but bravery was not enough against such numbers. Alindra gripped a stone railing of the balcony. Her knuckles turned white with pressure. Behind her, she could hear the voices of advisors and generals arguing in the throne room. Her father, the king, sat on his ancient seat and listened to them shout at each other. "We must surrender," one general said. "We cannot win this war." "Surrender means death," another replied. "The Krath do not take prisoners. Then we flee. We take the royal family to the outer colonies and hide." "And abandon our people?" "Never." The arguments went round and round. No one had an answer. No one had hope. Alindra closed her eyes and let her mind drift to a memory from long ago. 20 years in the past, when she was still a child, her family had traveled to a small blue planet called Earth. The humans there were a young species, barely reaching into space, but they had potential. The Valorian Empire wanted to make friends with them. For 3 years, Alindra lived in a compound near a human city. She learned their language. She ate their food. She played in their gardens under a yellow sun that felt warm on her blue skin, and she met a boy. His name was Daniel Carter. He was the son of a translator who worked with the Valorian diplomats. Daniel was small for his age, with messy brown hair and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. He was not afraid of her, even though she was an alien princess. He treated her like a normal girl. They became friends. Best friends. Every day, they would meet in the gardens. They chased butterflies through the flowers. They climbed trees and pretended to be explorers. They lay in the grass and watched clouds drift across the sky, while they talked about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about human history, about wars and heroes and people who never gave up even when things seemed impossible. Alindra told him about the stars, about distant worlds and ancient civilizations. They shared secrets and dreams and fears. One day, near the end of her time on Earth, Daniel made her a promise. "I will get stronger," he said. His young face was serious, more serious than any child should be. "I will join the military and learn to fight. And if you ever need help, I will come for you, no matter how far away you are." Alindra had smiled at him. "That is a big promise for such a small boy." "I mean it," Daniel said. "I will protect you, always." She believed him. In that moment, looking into his brown eyes with their flecks of gold, she believed every word. Then her family returned to Valoria, and she never saw Daniel again. Over the years, the memory faded. She grew up. She learned to be a princess. She attended councils and ceremonies and diplomatic functions. She forgot the small human boy who had been her friend for 3 short years. But now, standing on the balcony while her world burned, the memory came back to her. She wondered what had happened to Daniel Carter. She wondered if he ever thought of her. She wondered if he had kept his promise to become strong. A messenger ran onto the balcony. He was young, barely more than a boy, and his face was pale with fear. "Your Highness," he gasped. "There is a transmission from the outer territories. A ship has entered our space." Alindra turned to look at him. "Another Krath vessel?" "No, Your Highness. It is a human ship." Her heart jumped in her chest. Human? Only one ship? Yes, they are requesting permission to approach. Their captain says he has come to help us. Alindra pushed past the messenger and walked quickly into the throne room. The generals stopped their arguing and turned to look at her. Her father raised his tired eyes from the floor. "Father," Alindra said, "we have received help. A human ship has come." The room erupted in noise. Some laughed bitterly. Others shook their heads. "One human ship against the Krath Armada?" General Varath said. His voice dripped with scorn. "This is a joke. The humans are children playing at war. What can they possibly do?" "They can fight," Alindra said. "I have studied humans. They are more dangerous than they appear." "Dangerous?" Varath laughed again. "Their planet has barely achieved interstellar travel. They have no experience with real warfare." "You are wrong," Alindra said. Her voice was calm but firm. "Humans have fought wars for thousands of years. They have killed each other in numbers that would horrify us. They have developed weapons of terrible power, and they never surrender. Never." The room fell silent. Everyone looked at the young princess with surprise. She had never spoken with such conviction before. King Alderus leaned forward on his throne. "You know much about these humans, daughter. I lived among them for 3 years, father. I know their spirit. They are small and young, but they have fire in their hearts. If this human captain says he can help us, I believe we should listen." The king was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. Bring up the transmission. Let us hear what this human has to say." A large screen flickered to life on the wall. The image showed the bridge of a ship, smaller and less elegant than Valorian vessels, but solid and strong. In the center of the screen stood a figure in a dark uniform. His face was hidden behind a tactical visor that covered his eyes and nose. "I am Commander Carter of the Earth vessel Constellation," the figure said. His voice was deep and steady. "I have come to offer my assistance in your fight against the Krath." Alindra felt her breath catch in her throat. Carter. The name echoed in her mind like a bell. Why would Earth help us? King Alderus asked. "We have no alliance with your people. The Krath are a threat to all free worlds," Commander Carter replied. "Today they attack Valoria. Tomorrow they may attack Earth. It is better to stop them here, together, than to wait and face them alone." General Varath stepped forward. "One ship cannot change this war, human. You will die for nothing." There was a pause. Then Commander Carter spoke again, and his voice carried something hard and unbreaking. "Humans do not calculate our actions based on survival. We calculate them based on what is right. Your people are suffering. I am here to help. Accept my offer or refuse it, but do not tell me what I can or cannot do." The room was silent. No one had ever heard someone speak to a Valorian general that way. Alindra stepped forward. "We accept your help, Commander Carter. Welcome to Valoria." The figure on the screen turned slightly toward her. She could not see his eyes behind the visor, but she felt them on her face. Her skin tingled with a strange sensation, like recognition, like memory. "Thank you, Your Highness," Commander Carter said. "I will not fail you." The transmission ended. The war was about to change. The Constellation was not a beautiful ship. It was built for war, not for looks. Its hull was thick and gray, covered with scars from old battles. Its weapons were simple but deadly. Compared to the elegant Valorian cruisers, it looked like a rough stone next to polished diamonds. But Commander Carter did not care about beauty. He cared about winning. The Valorian admirals gathered in the war room of the Crystal Palace. They stood around a large table that displayed a map of the star system. Red dots showed the positions of Krath ships. There were hundreds of them, spread across the system like a disease. Commander Carter walked into the room. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a body that moved like a weapon. His tactical visor still covered his face. No one had seen his eyes yet. "You asked for a meeting," Admiral Varana said. She was old and stern, with silver hair pulled back tight. "We are listening, human." Carter stood at the edge of the table and studied the map. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pointed to a swirling mass of red and purple on the edge of the display. "The Crimson Nebula," he said. "What do you know about it?" Admiral Varana frowned. "It is dangerous. The electromagnetic fields inside disrupt sensors and targeting systems. Our ships avoid it. And the Krath? They avoid it too. No one fights in the nebula." Carter nodded slowly. "That is where we will destroy them." The room exploded with voices. The admirals shouted over each other. Some called him insane. Others called him stupid. General Vorath laughed so hard he had to hold his stomach. "You want to fight in the nebula?" Vorath said. "Our weapons will be blind. We will hit nothing." "Yes," Carter agreed. "But neither will they." The laughter stopped. The admirals looked at each other with confusion. "I do not understand," Admiral Varana said. "If both sides are blind, what advantage do we gain?" Carter turned to face them. His visor reflected the lights of the war room like dark mirrors. "The Krath rely on their superior numbers and their advanced targeting systems. Take those away, and they become equal to us. More than equal. Because in the nebula, the fight becomes about instinct, about courage, about the willingness to get close and strike without fear." He paused to let his words sink in. "Humans have a word for this kind of fighting. We call it dogfighting. Small ships moving fast, getting close, trusting their pilots instead of their computers. We have been doing it for centuries. The Krath have not." Princess Alindra stood in the corner of the room. She had come to observe, not to speak. But she found herself leaning forward, hanging on every word. There was something about the way Carter spoke, something familiar that she could not name. Admiral Varana crossed her arms. "Even if your plan works, how do we get the Krath to follow us into the nebula? They are not fools. We give them something they cannot resist," Carter said. "Me? You? I will take the constellation into the nebula alone. The Krath know I am here. They know I have been helping you. Their commanders will want my head as a trophy. I will make myself a target they cannot ignore." General Vorath shook his head. "This is suicide. You will die in there." Carter turned to look at him. Even with the visor hiding his eyes, something in his posture made the general step back. "Maybe," Carter said. "But I will take a lot of them with me." The room fell silent. The Valorian officers stared at this human who spoke of his own death as casually as he might speak of the weather. They did not understand him. They could not understand him. But Princess Alindra understood. She had seen this before, long ago, in the eyes of a small boy who promised to protect her no matter what. "I approve this plan," she said. Everyone turned to look at her. Her father was not here. In his absence, she had the authority to make military decisions. "Your Highness," Varth protested. "This is madness." "Perhaps," Alindra said, "but madness is all we have left. Prepare the fleet to support Commander Carter. We attack at dawn." The battle began 12 hours later. Commander Carter took the constellation deep into Krath territory. He flew past their patrol ships like a ghost. He appeared on their sensors, taunted them, then disappeared again. He was making them angry. He was making them careless. The Krath commanders took the bait. They sent 6 dreadnoughts after him, their largest and most powerful ships. They wanted to crush this annoying human and send a message to anyone else who might think of resisting. Carter led them straight into the Crimson Nebula. The moment the ships entered the swirling clouds of gas, everything changed. Sensors went blind. Targeting systems failed. The craft dreadnoughts stumbled like giants in the dark, unable to see or aim dot, but the constellation kept moving. Carter flew his ship with a skill that seemed impossible. He dodged through the clouds of gas, using them as cover. He appeared behind enemy ships, fired his weapons, and vanished before they could respond. His guns were smaller than theirs, but at close range, even small guns could do terrible damage. The first dreadnought died when Carter put 3 torpedoes directly into its engine core. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the nebula like a second sun. The second dreadnought tried to turn and run. Carter followed it, matching its every move. He got so close that his ship almost touched the enemy hull. Then he fired everything he had into their weapons array. The craft ship lost its guns and drifted helplessly. The third and fourth dreadnoughts tried to work together. They formed a defensive pattern, back to back, covering each other. Carter waited. He watched. And then he saw his opportunity. There was a pocket of unstable gas between the two ships. Carter fired a single torpedo into it. The gas exploded in a chain reaction that tore through both dreadnoughts at once. 2 kills with 1 shot. The 5th dreadnought turned to flee. Its commander had finally realized the truth. This was not a battle they could win. But it was too late. The Valorian fleet arrived. Admiral Varana led 30 cruisers into the nebula. They followed the path Carter had marked for them, navigating by the signals he broadcast. Their pilots were scared but determined. They had seen what one human could do. Now it was time to show what they could do beside him. The 5th dreadnought never made it out of the nebula. The 6th tried to send a distress call, but the electromagnetic interference blocked its signal. It died alone, surrounded by enemies, its crew never knowing that help would not come. When the battle ended, the Crimson Nebula was filled with wreckage. 6 craft dreadnoughts destroyed, thousands of enemy soldiers dead, and the constellation, scarred and damaged but still flying, led the Valorian fleet back to safe space. Princess Alindra watched the victory from the palace. She saw Carter's ship on the display, limping home with smoke pouring from its hull. She wanted to meet him. She wanted to look into his eyes and understand who he was. She sent him a message requesting an audience. He declined politely, saying he needed to repair his ship and prepare for the next battle. But his voice stayed in her mind. The way he said certain words, the rhythm of his speech. It was like hearing a song she had known in childhood but could not quite remember. That night, alone in her chambers, Alindra dreamed of a garden on Earth. She dreamed of a small boy with brown hair and eyes that sparkled with fire. She dreamed of a promise that crossed the stars. When she woke, her pillow was wet with tears. The night after the hospital battle, the resistance gathered in the underground bunkers beneath the royal fortress. Thousands of soldiers and civilians huddled together in the ancient tunnels, waiting for dawn, waiting for the next attack. Princess Alindra found Daniel sitting alone on a stone ledge, staring at nothing. His armor was off, and she could see the bandage on his shoulder where the plasma bolt had burned through his flesh. He looked tired. He looked old. He looked like a man who had been fighting for too long. She sat down beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. 20 years, she finally said. I thought I would never see you again. Daniel nodded slowly. I thought so too sometimes. Space is big. The odds of finding you were small, but you looked anyway. Every day. He turned to face her. His brown eyes were soft in the dim light. After you left Earth, I could not stop thinking about you. I joined the military like I promised. I trained harder than anyone. I became an officer, then a commander. And all the time, I kept asking about Valoria, kept looking for any news from your sector of space. Alindra felt tears building in her eyes. Why? We were just children. That promise was just words, not to me. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. You were the first person who ever saw me as something more than a translator's kid. You believed in me. You made me believe in myself. How could I forget that? How could I break that promise? She reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm and rough with calluses. Human hands were different from Valorian hands, but the touch felt right. How did you find me? She asked. 3 months ago, we intercepted a craft communication. They were planning to attack Valoria. I volunteered to come help. My commanders thought I was crazy. One ship against an armada. But I had to try. One ship, Alindra said. You crossed half the galaxy with one ship. I would have crossed the whole galaxy, Daniel said. I would have crossed 100 galaxies. Nothing was going to stop me from keeping my promise. They sat together in silence again. Above them, through hundreds of feet of stone, the city burned. But down here, in this quiet moment, the war seemed far away. I remembered something, Alindra said. In the battle, you spoke perfect Valorian. How do you know our language so well? Daniel smiled. It was the same smile she remembered from childhood, full of warmth and mischief. You taught me, he said. In the gardens, remember? You said it was important to speak each other's languages. I remember. Alindra laughed softly. You were terrible at it. I practiced. Every night for 20 years. I never wanted to forget. She squeezed his hand tighter. I forgot. I forgot so much. The language, the games, the promises. I grew up and let it all fade away. You did not forget everything, Daniel said. When I first spoke to you from my ship, I saw it in your eyes. Some part of you remembered. I thought I was imagining it. I thought I wanted it so badly that I was seeing things that were not there. It was there, Daniel said. It was always there. Some things do not fade, no matter how much time passes. The next morning, human reinforcements arrived. 3 ships from Earth's colonial fleet broke through the craft blockade and landed in the fortress courtyard. They carried fresh soldiers, weapons, and supplies. More importantly, they carried Hope. Captain Lisa Monroe led the reinforcement team. She was a tall woman with red hair and a face full of freckles. She saluted Daniel and grinned. Took us a while to find you, Commander. You really picked a fight this time. I picked a worthy cause, Daniel said. Captain, I want you to coordinate with the Valorian forces. We are going to take back this city. Yes, sir. The planning sessions began immediately. Daniel worked side by side with Princess Alindra and the Valorian generals. He shared human tactics and technology. He listened to Valorian strategies and found ways to combine them with his own. For the first time, the two species truly worked together. During one long night of planning, Admiral Verana approached Daniel. She had been skeptical of him at first, dismissive of humans in general. But she had seen him fight. She had seen him lead. Her opinion had changed. Commander Carter, she said, I owe you an apology. I underestimated your people. Daniel shook his head. You were protecting your planet. I understand. No, Verana said firmly. I was arrogant. I thought humans were too young, too primitive to matter. I was wrong. You have shown us something we had forgotten. What is that? That strength is not about technology or numbers. It is about the will to fight, the refusal to surrender. Your people have that in abundance. Daniel smiled slightly. We had to learn it the hard way. Humans have a long history of war. We know what it costs. We know what it is worth. The counterattack launched 3 days later. Human and Valorian soldiers fought side by side through the streets of the capital. They advanced block by block, building by building. The craft resisted fiercely, but they were no longer fighting a beaten enemy. They were fighting an alliance that believed in itself. Princess Alundra fought in the front lines. Her guards had given up trying to stop her. She carried a rifle and a blade, and she used both with skill. She stayed close to Daniel, watching his back while he watched hers. They moved through the city like a single creature, anticipating each other's movements without words. 20 years apart had not broken the connection between them. If anything, it had made it stronger. By the end of the first day, they had reclaimed the government district. By the end of the second day, they had secured the communication center and broadcast a message to the entire planet. The resistance was winning. The Krath could be beaten. On the third day, they reached the central plaza where the constellation had crashed. Daniel stood before his damaged ship and looked up at the sky. The Krath fleet still hung in orbit, but they were hesitating now. Their ground forces were being destroyed. Their invasion was failing. "One more push," Daniel said. "We need to hit their command ship. Cut off the head, and the body will die. How do we reach it?" Alindra asked. "The orbital defenses are still active." Daniel turned to look at her. There was something in his eyes, a determination that frightened her. "I will take the constellation up. She is damaged, but she can fly one more time." "That is suicide," Alindra said. Her voice shook. "The ship will not survive the assault." "Maybe not," Daniel agreed. "But the mission will." "No." Alindra grabbed his arm. "I just found you again. I will not lose you now." Daniel put his hand over hers. His touch was gentle, but his resolve was iron. "You will not lose me," he said. "I promise. And you know what my promises are worth." She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream. She wanted to lock him in the bunkers and never let him leave. But she saw the truth in his eyes. This was what he was born to do. This was why he had crossed the galaxy. Not just for her, but for all of them. She let go of his arm. "Come back to me," she said. "Always," Daniel replied. He walked toward his ship. The battle for Valoria was about to reach its end. The Krath did not wait long to strike back. Their fleet regrouped faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks, they launched a direct assault on Valoria Prime itself. Princess Alindra stood on the walls of the royal fortress and watched the enemy ships descend through the atmosphere. They came like a dark cloud, blocking out the light of the twin suns. Thousands of transport vessels carried millions of Krath soldiers. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. The orbital defense platforms fired until their guns melted. The Valorian Air Force threw everything they had at the enemy. But there were too many. There were always too many. The Krath landed in waves. Their soldiers poured out of the transports and spread across the capital city like a flood. They were tall and brutal, with gray skin and 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Their eyes glowed red with hunger for conquest. The people of the capital fled in terror. They ran through the streets, carrying children and whatever they could grab. They screamed for help that did not come. The city that had stood for 10,000 years began to burn. Alindra wanted to fight. She had trained with weapons since she was a child. She knew how to use a blade and a rifle. But her guards would not let her leave the fortress. "Your safety is more important than one battle," they said. "If you die, the resistance dies with you." She hated them for being right. Then the constellation arrived. The human ship broke through the Krath blockade like a needle through cloth. It took hits from a dozen enemy weapons, but kept coming. It crashed down in the central plaza of the capital city. Its landing so hard, it cracked the ancient stones. Commander Cotter walked out of his ship before the dust had settled. He wore heavy armor now, black and scarred from battle. His visor still covered his face. Behind him came 20 human marines, men and women with hard eyes and steady hands. "The constellation is grounded," Carter announced over every open channel. I am going to fight on foot. Any Valorians who want to join me, meet at the Central Plaza." Within an hour, 300 Valorian soldiers had gathered around him. They were scared and tired and beaten. But something about this human made them want to fight again. Carter did not give speeches. He did not promise them victory. He simply looked at them and said, "Follow me." They followed Dodd. The battle for the capital became a nightmare of blood and fire. The Krath had numbers. The defenders had Commander Carter. He moved through the burning streets like a force of nature. His rifle never missed. His blade never stopped. When a squad of Krath blocked his path, he went through them like a storm through leaves. When a building full of civilians was surrounded, he broke through the enemy lines and led them to safety. Princess Alindra watched it all from the fortress screens. She saw him carry wounded children through collapsing buildings. She saw him stand alone against 10 Krath soldiers and kill them all. She saw him take a plasma bolt to the shoulder that would have dropped any normal person. And he kept fighting like nothing had happened. "Who is he?" She whispered. No one could answer her. Finally, she could stand it no longer. She pushed past her guards and ran out of the fortress. They chased her, shouting for her to stop, but she was faster. She knew these streets. She had played in them as a child. She found Carter's group defending a hospital. Hundreds of wounded people lay inside, too injured to move. The Krath wanted to burn it down. Carter would not let them. Alindra picked up a rifle from a fallen soldier and joined the line. The guards caught up with her, saw what she was doing, and decided to stay and fight beside her. The Krath came in waves. They died in waves. Carter was everywhere at once. He shouted orders in perfect Valorian, a language no human should have known so well. He positioned defenders where they needed to be. He saw weaknesses before the enemy could exploit them. During a brief pause in the fighting, a Krath commander appeared at the end of the street. He was bigger than the others, with gold markings on his gray skin that showed his high rank. "Human," the commander shouted. "I am Warlord Krath. I challenge you to single combat. If you win, my troops will withdraw. If I win, you will die knowing your species is weak." Carter stepped forward without hesitation. "Carter, no." Alindra shouted. "It is a trap." He turned to look at her. His visor was cracked now, damaged by the earlier plasma hit. Through the crack she could see part of his face. A jaw, a cheek. Something familiar. "Trust me," he said. His voice was gentle, different from his command voice. It sent a shiver down her spine. The fight lasted 3 minutes. Warlord Krath was strong. He had 4 arms and each one carried a weapon. He moved with the speed of a trained killer. He had won 100 duels against 100 enemies, but Carter was something else entirely. He dodged the first blow by a hair. He blocked the second with his rifle. He rolled under the third and came up inside the warlord's guard. His blade found the gap in Krath armor, the weak point under the arm, and he drove it home. Warlord Krath fell to his knees. He looked at the human standing over him with disbelief in his red eyes. "What are you?" he gasped. "I am a man keeping a promise," Carter said. Then he finished it. The Krath troops stared at their fallen commander. Then, true to the warlord's word, they began to retreat. Not all of them, but enough. The pressure on the hospital eased. Alindra walked toward Carter. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She did not understand what she was feeling, only that she needed to see his face. "Commander," she said, "your visor is damaged. Let me see your wound." He stepped back. "I am fine, Your Highness." That was not a request. They stared at each other for a long moment. Around them, soldiers watched in silence. No one moved. Slowly, Carter reached up and removed his cracked visor. Alindra felt the world stop spinning. His face was older now. There were scars on his cheek and forehead. Lines around his eyes spoke of years of war and pain. But those eyes, brown with flecks of gold, had not changed at all. "Daniel," she breathed. He looked at her with an expression she could not read. There was pain in it, and hope, and something else, something that had survived 20 years and uncountable miles of space. "Hello, Alendra," he said. "It has been a long time." She wanted to cry. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to hit him for making her forget. She wanted to hug him for coming back. Instead, she just stood there, staring at the boy who had become a legend. "You came," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I promised I would," Daniel said. Humans always keep their promises. The battle still raged around them. The city still burned. The war was far from over. But in that moment, Princess Alendra felt something she had not felt in weeks. She felt hope. The constellation rose from the plaza on broken engines and wounded wings. Smoke poured from a dozen holes in its hull. Warning lights flashed across every console. The ship was dying, but it was not dead yet. Daniel Cotter sat in the pilot's seat with his hands steady on the controls. Behind him, the last of his Marines prepared for the final assault. They knew the odds. They knew they might not survive. But not one of them had chosen to stay behind. "Command, this is Constellation," Daniel said into his communicator. "We are beginning our approach to the Krath command ship." Princess Alendra's voice came back through the static. "Constellation, we have your signal. The fleet is ready to support you. Please, Daniel, be careful." "Careful is not how we do things," Daniel said. A small smile crossed his face. "But I will come back. I promised." The constellation shot up through the atmosphere like a bullet. Craft fighters tried to intercept it, but Daniel dodged them with moves that should have been impossible for a damaged ship. He had spent 20 years learning to fly. This was his masterpiece. The Valorian fleet engaged the Krath blockade from below. Admiral Varana led the charge, her cruisers opening holes in the enemy formation. Captain Monroe and the Earthships hit from the flanks, drawing fire away from the constellation. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was the last desperate throw of two species fighting for their survival. The Krath command ship hung at the center of the enemy fleet like a spider in its web. It was massive, 3 times the size of any other vessel, bristling with weapons and armor. The Krath High Admiral watched from its bridge as the tiny human ship approached. "One ship thinks it can challenge us?" The Admiral laughed. "Destroy it." 100 guns turned toward the constellation. Fire abutted from every direction. Every direction. The ship shook and screamed as blast after blast tore into its hull. But Daniel kept flying. He spun the ship through the barrage, using every bit of skill he had ever learned. Metal peeled away from the hull. Systems failed one by one. The lights went dark. The engines coughed and died. And still, he kept going. "Brace for impact!" Daniel shouted to his crew. The constellation crashed into the command ship's hangar bay at full speed. The impact was tremendous, shattering metal and stone and glass. The ship carved a path of destruction through the enemy vessel, finally coming to rest in a tangle of wreckage. Daniel kicked open what was left of his cockpit. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. His left arm hung at a bad angle, probably broken. But he was alive. "Everyone up," he ordered. "We have a job to finish." His Marines rose from the wreckage. Some were injured. Some were worse. But all of them could still fight. They moved through the Krath command ship like ghosts of vengeance. Daniel led the way, his rifle in his good hand, his broken arm tied against his chest. The enemy tried to stop them. The enemy failed. The bridge was at the center of the ship, protected by the best soldiers the Krath had to offer. Daniel and his team fought through them all. Every corridor was a battle. Every room was a war dot by the time they reached the bridge. Only Daniel and 4 Marines remained standing. The door exploded inward. Daniel stepped through the smoke and faced the Krath High Admiral. The Admiral was ancient by Krath standards, his gray skin wrinkled and marked with the scars of 100 battles. He looked at the blood-covered human standing before him and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. "You are one man," the Admiral said. His voice trembled slightly. "How can one man do this?" Daniel raised his rifle. His eyes were cold and hard, the eyes of a man who had crossed the galaxy for love and found only war. "I am not one man," Daniel said. "I am humanity, and we never stop fighting." The shot echoed through the bridge. On Valoria Prime, Princess Alindra watched the command ship go dark. Its systems failed one by one. Its weapons stopped firing. Its engines died. The Krath fleet hung in space, leaderless and confused. Then, slowly, they began to retreat. Ships peeled away from the battle and jumped to faster-than-light speed. More followed. Within an hour, the entire Krath armada was gone, fleeing back to their own territory with the memory of defeat burned into their minds. Valoria was free. The people poured into the streets to celebrate. They cheered and cried and held each other. They sang songs of victory that their ancestors had sung long ago. They were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. But Princess Alindra did not celebrate. She stood on the balcony of the Crystal Palace and stared at the sky, searching for a sign, any sign, that Daniel had survived. Hours passed. The celebration continued below. Still, she waited. Then, as the twin suns began to set, a shuttle appeared on the horizon. It was battered and scorched, barely holding together. It limped toward the palace and landed roughly in the courtyard. Alindra ran down the stairs faster than she had ever run in her life. The shuttle door opened. Daniel stood in the doorway, supported by 2 of his Marines. He was covered in blood, his own and others. His arm was in a rough splint. His face was pale with exhaustion, but he was alive. Alindra threw herself into his arms. She did not care about the blood or the pain or the watching crowds. She held him tight and felt his heart beating against her chest. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised," he said. Around them, humans and Valorians watched in silence. They saw their commanders, their leaders, holding each other like children who had found each other after being lost in a storm. It was not the ending they expected. It was something better. The days that followed were filled with recovery and rebuilding. The Krath invasion had left deep scars on Valoria Prime. Cities lay in ruins. Millions had died. The work of healing would take generations, but it had also forged something new. Earth and Valoria signed a formal alliance, the first between humans and any alien species. Trade routes opened. Technology was shared. Families from both worlds began to visit each other, to learn, to grow together. Daniel Carter received the highest honors both civilizations could offer. He stood before the Valorian Council and the Earth Colonial Congress, a hero to 2 peoples. But he did not care about medals or titles. He cared about the woman standing beside him. In a quiet ceremony, witnessed only by close friends and family, Daniel and Alindra joined their lives together. It was unprecedented, a human and a Valorian princess. But no one who saw them together could doubt their bond. "I waited 20 years for you," Alindra said on their wedding night, standing under the light of alien stars. "I spent 20 years coming to find you," Daniel replied. "Every day, every battle, every light year. It was all for this moment." She leaned her head against his shoulder. The universe stretched out before them, infinite and full of danger. There would be more wars, more challenges, more enemies. The Krath would return someday. Other threats would emerge, but they would face them together. The galaxy learned an important lesson in those dark days. They learned that humans were not the weak, primitive creatures they appeared to be. They were strong. They were brave. They were relentless. And when a human made a promise, they kept it. No matter the distance, no matter the danger, no matter the cost. That was what it meant to be human. Years later, when Elindra and Daniel had grown old together, when their children and grandchildren played in the same gardens where they had first met as children, people would ask Daniel about his journey. They would ask how he found the courage to cross the galaxy alone, to face an armada with one ship, to keep fighting when all hope seemed lost. His answer was always the same. "I made a promise," he would say. And humans always keep their promises. It became a saying among the stars, a proverb that young soldiers and diplomats learned in their first days of service. Never doubt a human with a promise to keep. They will cross galaxies to fulfill it. That is the strength of humanity. That is the power of love. And that is the end of the story.